Hola, people of the interweb. Hey, I'm Beauthemechanic. Check this out. What are we doing today? It's the new year. It's 2013. It's the first time I've seen you in a whole year. That's pretty gay, pretty funny. But either way, hey, check it. I'm back at work, making another video. And today what we got going on is a customer had her car towed in, and this is it's a 93 Toyota Camry, 4-cylinder. They made a bunch of these, so I figured it was a pretty cool video. And I don't think that I've made one, and I'm sure there's a shit ton of them on there, but most of the people on YouTube are retarded, except for maybe a few, you know, like Eric the Car Guy. He's pretty badass. If you guys want to learn some stuff, go check out his videos. He's got quite a few that are awesome. So mad props to Eric the Car Guy. And, you know, there's a couple other ones that are on there. You know, I used to like to watch that guy, David Farm. I mean, he seemed pretty cool. He had quite a few cool videos. David's Farm something was his YouTube thing. Back to on topic. So basically this is a 92, 93 Camry, like I said. Let's check and see. It's a 92, 93 Camry, like I said. We can check on the door and look. If you're wondering what year your car is, you can look right here. Bam, 1291, that makes it a 92. They call it a rollover month. The 9th month is usually a rollover month, so if your car says 992, it would be a 93. Or 993, it'd be a 94. So you roll over to the next month and usually order parts based on that. Anyway, this car got dropped off, towed in here because it doesn't run. It was just driving on the road and it died on the customer, and she called me and she says, "Hey Bo, my alternator little battery light is lit up and my CD player keeps you know, popping in and out." She said, "What does that mean?" And I said, "Hey, it means that your alternator's not charging." Okay. So, you know, that's one thing you guys can look at. You know, if you're driving on the road and all of a sudden your CD player starts kicking in and out, and possibly the lights are going dim, you're losing power, and the, you know, the battery light or the check engine light is flashing at you perhaps. Every car has kind of a different symptoms, you know, and like this Camry, it's specifically the battery light will come on and it tells you that something's wrong and it's not charging. It doesn't actually have a gauge to tell you how many volts you're charging at, which a lot of cars do. You know, a lot of the other newer cars will say, you know, 9 volts to 16, and it'll usually sit right around the middle, 14 volts or so. This car doesn't have that option, so just that little, you know, they call it an idiot light. The idiot light will just pop on. So, you know, I thought I'd use this as an opportunity to explain, you know, basically how batteries work, how alternators work, and, you know, hopefully this will help you guys diagnose problems. And I know it's probably pretty verbose and stupid for me to just keep explaining the most mundane topics, but I kind of want to use this as an example to tell you guys how shit works and not just how to replace shit. Because if you understand how it works, then you can diagnose the problem. You know, that's part of what being a mechanic is like being able to diagnose things and really understanding what the hell's going on, and not just like throwing parts at it. You know, and we all throw parts at stuff, but I mean, you know, as long as you know a little bit, that's good, you know. Knowledge is power, I guess, that's what they say. So anyway, back to, you know, cars, right? So the car, you know, your car has a lot of shit going on in it, okay? It's basically got everything your entire house has, but it's on wheels, and it runs up and down the road and stops, you know. You know, your house has heating and air conditioning. Well, your car has heating and air conditioning. It's called your heating and air conditioning, okay? Your house has electricity. Well, your car has electricity. It's got an alternator that produces that electricity, okay? You know, your house gets the power from the power company. They just send it in through some wires and through your house. And then it goes to your service panel and goes throughout your house. Well, your car has its own generator, its own power plant that is in the damn car. And it's called your engine, okay? And it's got a belt that turns your alternator. That alternator turns the, you know, momentum of the engine spinning, those pistons running. It turns into electricity via that belt through like the centrifugal motion, okay? So the belt spins the alternator, and it generates an electrical field, an alternating current electrical field, okay? And so, you know, what happens on the back of the alternator is, because your house uses AC current, but the car doesn't. I'm sorry. The car actually uses DC current. You know, for whatever reason, they decided that DC current's a lot better for cars. You know, they could have used AC current. And some things they actually do, but that's kind of a different topic. For all the fuses and CD players and headlights and all that kind of shit that most of you guys are ever going to see, your car is using DC, DC voltage, direct current voltage. Okay, so, you know, how that works is the alternator is spinning and it's creating you know, an AC pulse. Okay, and on the back of almost every alternator that you're going to see, there's actually a device on the back of the alternator, and what it does is it transforms the AC current to DC current, okay? And so it just has it sitting there for you waiting, okay? Like, electricity, it's just created and you can't really store it unless you have a battery. So basically this electricity is just sitting there ready to go, and they rate this based on amps and voltage, okay? So, some alternators, if you've got a 100 amp alternator, it's a pretty strong alternator. It's 100 amps at 12 volts, maybe 13 volts, 14 volts, somewhere around there, okay? Some of them use 60 amps, if you don't have a very big electrical demand in your car, you might have a 60 amp, okay? So that's what this means, A lot of you guys that have big-ass CD players and stereos and stuff like that, one of the things you'll get into is that your CD player and your system, your music system, your amps and your woofers and your subs, all that stuff has so much electrical demand, it needs so much power that it will actually overwhelm the alternator, and it will actually start pulling power from the battery. And a lot of times you'll see this, man. You'll be driving on the road in your car when you have these big speakers and the lights will just dim. You'll see them every time the speakers hit, bump, bump. The headlights will dim because it's pulling electricity all the way from the alternator. It's pulling all that it can take, and it's pulling some out of the battery. So you'll see this a lot of times in these kind of guys' cars. It's such a horrible load that it'll smoke alternators, it'll smoke your battery. So there's other stuff on the internet you guys can read. If that's your problem, you can figure that out. You can change your alternator to a 100 amp alternator versus a 60 or 120 amp alternator or whatever it is. So anyway, that's what I was just trying to explain to you guys a little bit of how the electrical current's created and what it does in your car. Okay, so a lot of people don't understand too. Let me stress this a little bit. A car, all the battery does in your car is turn the car on. Okay. For most purposes, all it's going to do is, you turn your car off, you go inside, you sleep, you wake up the next morning, the car is completely cold and completely off, and you throw the key in the car, and the battery does all the work, man. The battery sends electricity, stored chemical electricity, converts to electricity, sends it to the starter, and starts spinning over the engine, and it fires up. Boom, it gives it a spark, and it gives it that energy to spin the car over, and then boom, it fires up, and it starts running on its own. Now the battery is completely not really doing anything. It's just sitting there again until you turn it off and you get to wherever you're going. It's just basically sitting there, hanging out by itself. It's still connected, but it's not. None of its power is really going to the car per se. What is doing all the work is the alternator at this point, because the car is now running. The alternator is now creating its own electricity, and the car's demand for electricity is being run by the alternator itself, okay? Unless something bad happens, like the alternator fails, the belt breaks, okay, or something like this, and then the alternator is now, it's broken, it's not working anymore, so all of a sudden, that path goes back to the battery. So the reason I explain this all to you is because this is what this car came in here for, okay? The car came in here and the girl driving it says, oh man, it's just, I think I have a short or something, my radio's, doing weird stuff, the headlights are doing weird stuff. And, that's not the problem. The problem is that the alternator is now completely out of the system and it's not producing any electricity. Nothing's producing electricity. So now you're just running on this stored capacity called a battery. And that battery's only got so much energy in it, okay? And so you run down the road with your headlights on at night and your radio on, and then the car itself is using electricity based on spark. It needs spark to drive and to operate the computers and etc. And eventually it'll just drain that battery to nothing, and eventually, you might last, an hour or so, and then eventually there's nothing left in it, and the car will just die on the side of the road, and it won't try and turn on, it won't do anything. You probably will have super dull, dim headlights, your radio might not kick on. But anyway, so I tell you all this stuff to try and educate you on how cars work, how electricity works. Let me show you now how we're gonna swap this out. Hey you guys, let's do one real quick thing before I skip out and do the next little video on how to actually change an alternator for this Camry. Let me show you guys how you check, okay? How you can possibly check your alternator in your car if you don't have any tools per se. Most modern shops are going to have, voltmeters, and they're going to have, multimeters. They're going to have ways to test the amperage that the alternator is producing, etc., etc., etc. Let me just show you a real quick way to check your alternator for producing power. If you think that your alternator might be toasted and it's not working the way that it should. But let me warn you guys that this is obviously like a 92 Camry, and this will work on all cars that I know of. But I probably wouldn't do it if my car was brand new. If you're driving a brand new 2012 Jaguar, you probably shouldn't do the test that I'm going to show you. If you're driving a 2012 BMW 7 Series that costs $150,000, you probably shouldn't do this to it. If you're driving a 1985 pickup truck, you probably ain't going to hurt anything, okay? If you're driving a 97 model Ford Taurus or whatever, you're not going to hurt anything, you know. So this is obviously, you know, use a little bit of wisdom. You know, if your car's worth $100,000, you probably shouldn't be messing around with it yourself, okay? But if your car's worth $2,000 or $3,000 and you know a little bit about stuff, then this isn't going to hurt anything, and I've never seen it hurt anything. But I'm just warning you that there is a possibility. All we're basically going to do is, you know, try and turn this car on, and while it's running, I'm going to just pull one of the terminals on the battery, okay? And like I explained to you guys a minute ago, what that basically is doing is taking the battery completely out of the loop. Okay, if you pull one of the leads off the battery and the car continues to run, then you know that the alternator is working to some degree. Okay, if you pull one of the terminals to the battery, let's say the negative terminal, you just pull the negative terminal off and the car dies instantly, then you know that something's wrong. Okay, something's wrong, and that the car itself is running completely on the battery that you have in the car. Okay. And, you know, if you had a multimeter, you could watch the voltage yourself, and you could see that a battery usually has about 12.8 volts or so, and you can see that with the alternator it's got 14. You can see that jump up and down. But, you know, a lot of you guys don't have a multimeter, and you don't know how to use a multimeter, and so that's a whole different problem. So this is just a really simple redneck trick that you can do at your house, and I've never seen it hurt a car, but like I said, don't do it on your 2012 Ferrari, okay? Because it could be bad. Well, here we go. Check this out. Here we go, car. Let's see what's up. Awesome. Let's see. Will it even start? So everything's lit up. It won't even do anything. You see, the battery's so low right now that this thing won't even begin to try and turn on. So let's hook a battery to it and see what we can do. Just messing around. All right, check it. All I did was set up the little tripod, point at the battery. This battery is severely discharged, okay? So what I'm gonna do to get this thing to turn on, I just hooked up my battery, okay? This is just jumper cables to a battery I have sitting on the floor, okay? I'm gonna take my battery out of line, take this battery free and see what happens. You see how that just happened? Obviously, that alternator is not producing anything. And if it is, it's probably 6 volts or something like that. It's definitely not producing enough voltage and amperage to keep this car running, okay? So basically, that's just a really, really cheap, easy, redneck way for you to test your alternator. Okay, you don't have to be a rocket scientist and, you know, to work on almost any car that I know of. Some diesels are kind of weird, so if you got a diesel truck, they're kind of weird. They'll continue to run for a while, you know. But any gas-driven car. Okay, now the kick side of this is if the alternator was working, okay, I would have pulled that connection right there, and the car would have kept going. I could take this damn battery out and move it down the street if I wanted, okay? This battery doesn't even have to be in the car for this car to continue to run. Okay, with a good alternator. Okay, so, you know, the next video I'm going to make specifically on this car, the Camry, you know, it's going to be how to switch this alternator, which is really easy. And so check out my other videos if you want to figure out how to change a 92 Camry alternator.